In the past 1 week, Nigeria's national electricity has experienced two major collapses, each time throwing millions of consumers into darkness, with the attendant losses in economic and humanitarian terms. Well, Arise News analyst Dayo Sobowale joins us now to discuss the incessant disruption of this critical national asset and possible ways through which it can be minimized to the barest minimum. It's a good day, and many thanks for joining us here on Newsday as usual.
It's a pleasure.
Now, this collapse has happened one time too many, and experts are saying that it has become critical for the sector to acquire the supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA system, saying that the national grid in itself is too large geographically. Do you think that that in itself is what is going to help us get out of this constant electricity blackouts that we keep experiencing?
Well, this is infrastructure failure, and it has always been there. Even though if it works, we do not have the capacity to make sure that the electricity still goes round with the attendant consequences. Because if you don't have power, you can't move on with industrialization. You can't move on with digitalization. You can't move on with taking care of our people. You can't move on with securing our military and giving them the correct equipment and firepower. But you see, the minister has said something. We have a new minister of power now. At a conference, he said he will attempt to get 20,000 megawatts. 20,000 megawatts is inadequate. And that will be in the next 3 years. Some experts, some experts have said that globally, you need a megawatt to a million people. With a population of 200 million, we need 200,000 megawatts. He's aiming at 20,000 in 3 years. And this should be commended. Because the last minister, was able to achieve only 5,000 megawatts. So there's a big infrastructural deficit on the ground, whether we like it or not. And that is what we have to face. You see, the transmission companies need what they have to transmit. The power generating companies need gas and so many things, and those things are not there. So it's almost like a fractured process from power generation to transmission and to distribution. But the one we know are the discos. Those are the ones who give us meters, who bring us light. But then, if they don't have power transmitted to them, they cannot distribute anything. And you see, the Nigerian public or the consumer, there's protection for the consumer that is not overcharged. But most consumers they say 6 out of 10 Nigerians don't want to pay electricity bill because they don't trust it and because they know it is not regular. So there's fault on both sides. Even the consumer who will protect the electricity consumer knows that the consumer wants to eat his cake and have it. Then there you have the regulatory authorities. You have the Nigeria Electricity Regulation Commission, which to me is getting out of date because there's an Electricity Act. There's an electricity, which was one of the first things the president signed, and which I think should be the first priority of the minister to put into effect. To make sure private sectors are involved, to make sure the state governments are involved. I think Lagos State has taken a lead somewhat in that. They have their own power generating station or something to that effect. The private companies too are trying to do that. But then the act must be put into effect, and I think the president who should move that is the Minister of Power. I haven't heard him saying anything on that, except to set a target of 20,000 megawatts, which is grossly inadequate. It's not even to 1/10 of what we need. But that's the situation on the ground. There's infrastructural problem, collapse, infrastructural deficit. And if you don't have it, you can't generate power, you can't distribute power, you can't transmit power.
Well, noted, Mr. Sobowale, paired with the infrastructural deficit that you've elaborated on, it was also mentioned by the Minister of Power that there's been so much investment that's been made, since the privatization with no marked improvement. Do you get a sense that these investments are not necessarily being, I'm trying to look for the right way to say this, that the funds that are being channeled into this are somewhat being misappropriated or whatnot, or being misused by those who are supposed to actually make sure that they reach these crucial goals?
I will elaborate on that. It is not the case of fraud. During the Obasanjo regime, they voted a lot of money for turbines. See, I can tell you that some of those turbines are still at the port, almost 6 years now. Some of them, you see, it was difficult to move them up country to their sites. Some of them, the land on which they want to install them, landowners have come out to, so they are still there. Most of us just spent a lot during this time to create electricity centers in Southeast and Southeast especially. One of them is the one that Lumelu has just tried to do. But it's not as if they are not monitoring the expenditure, the huge investment. The last assembly set of committees, you remember? But the mistake they made was this sort of thing. Those turbines had not landed there. So they said those who ordered the turbines had eaten money, had embezzled money. Whereas we later found out that some of those turbines, if you order them, then they start making them. It will take 2-3 years before they are delivered. So it's not a case of fraud. So you see the Nigerian paradox. You may discover that they have done the needful, but those things are not on site. So if they set up another committee in the National Assembly now, they will be saying different things. And that is where the corruption comes in. And then again, you see, there must be a way to make the Nigeria Electricity Regulation Commission liaise with the National Assembly on tariffs. If the discos don't get adequate tariffs, to do their businesses, they'll go out of business. Many of the discos are out of business because they borrowed money. But National Assembly will never sit there and allow tariffs to be increased because of the bias of transparency and suspicion that Nigerians have against electricity bills. So there's a quagmire. But then that's the duty of the minister to find a way through it. To find a way to update the infrastructure of the grid. It's a transmission problem. So that it's not thought, okay, look, maybe we have dams, we have Shiroro, we have Jeba, we have them. This is rainy season. They should have water. Maybe a dam just collapsed in they should have water now. Ethiopia just blocked the Nile in spite of the protests of Egypt, and it has generated electricity for its people because it's more after the welfare of its people than trying to please Egypt. We don't have such resolution, such firmness, such patriotism on the ground. It was apparent that the president meant well when he signed into law the Electricity Act. But what have we seen since? Nothing. So it's this man's situation.
Okay, Mr. Sobowale, part of even the report that had come out shows that the Association of Power Generation Companies is reporting that these generation companies are still owed over 1.6 trillion naira, and it's affecting their ability to operate efficiently. Now, you've touched...
generating or distributing?
In generating, in affecting the ability to operate efficiently on both ends. But I'm talking about now, what strategies would you advise or would you suggest can be put in place to address this liquidity challenge in the power value chain? Because, I mean, we're talking about investments going in and not necessarily seeing results. But what about monies that are being owed to some of these companies? 1.6 trillion naira is a lot of money.
Of course. But you see, if you borrow money for a project, and if that project is not paying back, you'll be in deficit. That is the situation. And that's what I just told you about the discos. I have friends who are in the distribution business who had buoyant companies and thought electricity would be a thriving business to be involved in. And they lost their business, literally. And you see, some people have advocated that government should bail them out. But you see, in this era of subsidy removal, such talk does not sound appealing. But that is the situation. If you are serious about power, about free education, which is my own baby, if you are serious, we have to subsidize them, separate them from the rest of society, so they move. But we cannot put a blanket. I mean, even electricity. Electricity too needs fuel. You get me? They are all intertwined and intertwined. So that's why I'm talking about intervention. Help will not come from the skies or from this free market economy. And that's what they are saying at G7, at G20, G77, that the way the world is structured, it's like it is a free market economy that is running things. And we are borrowing money. You cannot pay back money. You cannot go our own way. So there is a dilemma. It is that dilemma that has trickled down to this collapse, constant collapse of the electricity grid.
And to
It's
even
an interconnected issue.
To even add flesh to that, we saw the statement that was made by Nugasa's president, that's Bennett Okorie, advising that Nigerian refineries should be given emergency attention by the government to ensure rising energy costs does not murder the economy.
Yes, he has always been saying it. Yes, he has always been saying it. But is anybody listening? I know you want solution today.
Yes, please.
No
time like the present.
Well, let's see that people are up and doing. You get me? The infrastructure don't, even if you want a baby, it takes 9 months to deliver now. Infrastructure, I tell you, some of these turbines, some will be at the port, some may be at site and people are not allowing them to function. But at the Obasanjo time, they took measures to make sure we have power. During this former Minister of Power, at least he tried to make 5,000 megawatts, and you could see the difference. But now we have 47 megawatts. What does that mean? What does that mean? And the minister is aiming at 20,000 in 3 years' time. So hope springs eternal. That's what I would say. There's a lot of problem on the ground.
Well,
anything else?
Want to do the honors?
That's a good place to end this, of course. Mr. Dayo Sobowale, we always appreciate your time and analysis here on Newsday.
Thank you.